By first light on Christmas Eve, 1916, Australian mounted riflemen were already in position, facing an Ottoman defence line built for one purpose only: to kill anyone who crossed the open desert in front of it. The sand ahead of them was flat and exposed. No ridges, no trees, no folds in the ground. Just open space under a rising sun. The kind of ground that favoured machine guns and punished movement. Their objective was clear: break the Ottoman hold on the Sinai and push the threat away from the Suez Canal. One narrow strip of water that connected Britain to India, to Australia, and to the wider empire. If the canal fell, the consequences would ripple across the entire war. For months, the Ottomans had probed and attacked across the desert, launching raids designed to stretch British defences and expose weakness. Every mile of sand became a battlefield, not just of bullets, but of logistics. Water had to be carried. Railways had to be built across shifting dunes. Pipelines had to be dragged forward, piece by piece. By late 1916, the British advance was finally ready to strike. The Australian mounted troops were not traditional cavalry. They rode to battle, but they fought on foot. Their horses gave them speed and reach in a landscape where wheeled transport struggled. They were hardened by months of desert campaigning, used to heat, thirst and exhaustion. But nothing could prepare them for what awaited at dawn. As the light spread across the desert, the order to advance was given. The Australians rode forward, spreading out instinctively to reduce their visibility as targets. Hooves kicked up dust, leather creaked. The only sound was movement and breathing. Ahead of them, unseen but ready, Ottoman gunners watched through sights already aligned on the approaches. They had prepared their positions carefully. Fields of fire were mapped. Distances were known. The desert offered perfect visibility once the sun rose. They waited until the range closed. Then, they opened fire. Machine gun bursts tore across the sand with brutal precision. Horses collapsed mid-stride. Men were hurled from the saddle or dragged down by wounded mounts. Entire sections vanished in seconds. What had been an advance dissolved almost instantly into chaos. Survivors flung themselves flat against the sand, pressing their bodies into the ground as rounds snapped overhead. Men clawed at the desert with bare hands, trying to dig shallow scrapes that offered little more than psychological comfort. Orders were lost in the noise. Signals failed. Units became scattered clusters of men, pinned in place by fire they could not answer. The open desert became a trap. Any attempt to rise drew bullets. Any movement was punished. Retreat across the same exposed ground seemed impossible. Advance seemed suicidal, and still the sun climbed. The cold of early morning vanished quickly. Heat radiated upward from the sand, baking men and animals alike. Water bottles emptied. Throats burned. Horses began to tremble, their strength draining far faster than their riders. Wounded men lay exposed where they had fallen, unable to move, unable to escape the sun or the fire. Some begged for water, others were already silent. Hours passed with almost no progress. The Ottomans fired steadily and deliberately, conserving ammunition, confident in their positions. Their trenches and machine gun nests dominated the battlefield. From their perspective, the Australians were being destroyed without ever reaching them. By midday, the situation was critical. Staying where they were meant slow death by heat, thirst, and bullets. Retreat meant crossing open ground under sustained fire. The attack was collapsing. Another failed desert assault would leave the Ottomans emboldened and the Suez Canal still under threat. It was at this moment that General Harry Cheval made his decision. There would be no withdrawal. Instead, he ordered an all-out assault. The mounted riflemen were to dismount, fix bayonets, and advance on foot directly towards the machine gun positions that had already decimated them. It was an order that defied instinct, but it was born of necessity. The Australians rose from the sand and began to move forward. It was a grim, relentless advance. Men moved in short rushes, dropping flat, then rising again. Others ran without stopping, knowing that hesitation could be fatal. Casualties mounted with every gained yard, but as the distance closed, something shifted. Machine guns that dominated at long range struggled at close quarters. Fields of fire narrowed. Gunners were forced to reposition under pressure. Grenades were thrown. Rifles cracked at close range. Then the Australians reached the trenches. What followed was brutal and chaotic. There was no room to maneuver, no space to step back. Rifles were too long. Bayonets were used when possible, but often there was no room for even that. Men fought with fists, rifle butts, blades, and whatever else they could seize. The fighting was savage and intimate. Shouts and screams echoed along the trench lines. The noise of battle was overwhelming. Fear and adrenaline blurred everything into instinct and violence. Ottoman defenders, exhausted by heat and hours of combat, began to give way. One position fell, then another. Trenches were overrun in sequence as the Australians pushed forward relentlessly. Resistance collapsed unevenly. Some fought to the end. Others broke and ran. Many surrendered where they stood, surrounded and outnumbered. By late afternoon, the battle was transformed. What had begun as a near catastrophe became a hard-won victory. The Ottoman force guarding the desert corridor was defeated. Hundreds of prisoners were taken. Machine guns were captured. Defensive lines were shattered. The immediate threat to the Suez Canal was pushed back. The cost was severe. Men lay dead across the sand. Horses had collapsed and died in staggering numbers. Units were exhausted and depleted. But the strategic impact was undeniable. Control of the northern Sinai shifted decisively. From this point forward, the British advance would continue eastward. Railways and pipelines would follow the troops. Gaza would become the next objective, then Jerusalem. The Battle of the Desert War began to tilt. Yet this battle was not remembered by sweeping maneuvers or elegant strategy. It was remembered for a moment when everything seemed lost. When men, pinned under fire in an open desert beneath a merciless sun, chose to stand up and walk forward anyway. On Christmas Eve 1916, far from home, in a land that offered no shelter and no mercy, survival depended on a single decision: to advance when retreat meant annihilation. And in that moment, the line between disaster and victory was measured not in strategy or planning, but in human endurance. How much punishment can men endure before they break? And what happens when they refuse to break at all?